So welcome to the community call, and I am very happy to welcome the first speaker to the microphone, but the slides will turn, there they go. So we just did a round of welcome, and there's a general theme running through this presentation, which is around a theme of governance. We'll have one presentation or I would say a form of onboarding by Anna, who chairs the governance task force, and who will tell us a little bit about the work that the governance task force is doing right now, which concerns everyone in the Alliance. And then we'll have a second presentation by a new member of the Alliance, or new members of our community, called Tiberius, who I hope will be telling us about a very interesting network called Sensorica, and that might also serve as a source of inspiration for how the Alliance is organized. But it's also very relevant in and of itself for on the topic of distributed manufacturing. So now I'll hand over the microphone to you, Anna.
Thanks, Barbara. So I just wanted to make a bit of a pitch really today to share with the community the work that's being done about governance and tell you how you can get involved and ask for feedback, ideas and suggestions. We've started the process of designing a new governance model for the IoPA Alliance. We would like as many members as possible to get involved in that process, and I'll tell you a bit about how you can do that. The slide that's being shared at the moment, it contains some enabling conditions for democratic and participatory governance that have been shared by the Democratic Society, demsoc.org, which I found quite interesting and useful, and things that we are going to be considering as we go through, come up with ideas and sort of testing them against these. We are looking to develop a process that's got both input and output legitimacy, and we're aiming for a transparent, inclusive and accountable process.
Could you tell us more what input and output legitimacy mean?
Absolutely. So the output legitimacy refers to people feeling that the decisions that come out of a governance process are legitimate, so they can kind of see that the decisions make sense. Input legitimacy means they can actually understand the process by which those decisions are taken, and see that that is also a legitimate process. Could you move? Yeah, perfect. So we've talked about some work streams, which I'll come back to in a moment. But basically, we have launched the process, and we're telling as many people as possible in as many ways as possible that this process is going on. We do really want that everyone who wants to be a part of it can get involved. When I say we, I'm talking about the governance task force. Our conversations are happening on the new Discourse Community Forum. Our meetings are organised via that forum, and the minutes are all published on there, and anybody can join the task force at any time they want to. So we're currently working on developing some high-level concepts. We're then going to seek community feedback on those, and based on that feedback, we'll decide whether we've got a sort of broad agreement of a direction of travel and we want to move into more detail, or whether we need to look again at the broad concepts. So once we feel that we've got some conceptual ideas that have support, we will move on into detailing those. We'll also review the other work streams that I'm going to mention in a moment that we are not tackling at the moment, not because they're not important, but because we don't have the bandwidth to tackle everything at once. Once we've got detailed proposals, those will be made available for community review. Everything will be documented on the PubPub platform. So we also want to use this development of the governance model process to try and role model the type of open process that we think could be used for developing standards under the IoPA in the future. So everything will be documented in an open way. The full history of comments on the document, concerns raised, all this kind of thing will be trackable and will be kept. And yeah, so we'll make the proposals available for community review, and then we will have a vote on the proposals. Where in order to adopt a new model of governance, we're going to be looking for a dual approval, one approval under the old system of governance, which will mean approval by the council, and we will also be looking for approval under the new model of governance, whatever that is designed to be. We are really keen to get feedback on how this process looks to people, and for you to tell us if there are things that we can be doing better about it, things that would make it easier for you to participate, or things that you think we should be doing. So that's a little bit of the high level process. So could we go on to the work streams slide, please, Barbara? Thank you. So phase one of the things that we're working on right now. So the very first one of those is the process to define the new governance model. We've got a draft document describing that process on PubPub. It's linked from the governance and processes section of the community forum. If you go to the governance and processes section of the community forum, there is a README category which links key documents for that section, and it's one of the key documents that's linked from there. Could we just go back to the slide? So
I just wanted to demo how to get there. So governance and process,
great.
And then
README.
IoPA governance design process.
Or just the simplest, Barbara, was just README.
Oh, you put it in the README as well? Great.
Yeah. So
there. So what Anna just described and the timeline that was shown is an overview of this section, for example. And I will now go back to the PowerPoint.
Thanks very much. Then the main things that we're working on to try and get to some high-level proposals at the moment are an overall decision-making structure for the Alliance, a definition of members, and a code of conduct, which will be used through the process itself. In phase two, so as soon as we think we've got the bandwidth to take on more things, we will be looking at a charter or other foundational documents that may become needed. So particularly if those are essential for the definition of membership. So one possibility for the membership proposal would be to say that anyone who signs up to a charter, it can be a member. In that case, obviously creating that charter becomes a high priority. Once we've got the decision-making structure in place, the relations with other entities, including the foundations that are being set up at the moment, becomes a really important topic as well. But we feel that we need to have the basic decision-making structure in place first to sensibly address that. So that's why we're doing things in this order. As I said, we very much welcome comments and feedback and input, and we've in the governance process document that Barbara has just showed you how to get to, we do outline in that some ways that people can get involved, but also if there are ways that you would like to get involved that aren't listed, just tell us. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to have their views heard on this. I think that's all that I wanted to say. Barbara, Tiberius, Max, Sarah, do you have any more? We're all at the last governance task force call. Do you have anything to add on that, please?
I would like to add two things. One of them is that to underline again that the reason that there's a phase one and a phase two is a reason of bandwidth. it is also because, as you were saying towards the end, phase 2 depends on phase 1. The legitimacy of the outputs of defining what are the relations with other entities or defining what foundational documents are needed and what their impact is relies on the people deciding that to have been approved with the membership structure and the decision-making structure. So yeah, one phase 2 will build on phase 1 and give legitimacy to what comes out of phase 2. That was the first thing. And the second thing, to explicit a little bit how you can get involved, that is explicited in the document that we showed you how to get to, but in a nutshell, join the conversation on the forum. The first step could be to write in the member of the governance task force that you want to be a member of the governance task force, which would enable you to work on this. A second element would be to have a read through the document that was posted on PubHub and add any comment you might have. And the third would be to join the next governance task force, and they happen once a month, and they are announced on the forum in the governance section of the forum. So yeah, that was it for me.
Thanks, Barbara. And just to add on to that, I want to make it clear that you don't need to formally join the governance task force to be able to comment on the document. So if you join the governance task force, you'll be involved in developing the ideas, but everybody will get to review and comment on the documents and give their feedback. Yes, Sarah.
Thanks. I just had a quick question, I guess, on the documentation and a little bit about, I guess, the order of it. And so in considering, in phase 2, the charter coming forth, and in phase 1, the code of conduct being developed, I'm wondering if there have been discussions to establish an internal document or understanding of what the Alliance values are, from which many of these, I at least in my previous experience, and this is where it might be a bit different, is there, a shared values document that kind of serves as a foundation for the development of some of these subsequent documents, like the code of conduct and charter?
That's a really great point, Sarah. And the answer is there isn't really. So there is something that came out of Warsaw, but I feel like it should all be revisited and updated. And I think that it would be great to do that as part of as an early part of the process.
Okay. Great. Yeah,
I would say that as we have a phase 1 and phase 2 process, and that the beginning of the phase 1 is rooted in what came out of the initial governance, acknowledging every time that the idea is to reboot it. That means we're also, for the question of values, we're not starting from scratch. So we would have these values and say that's where we start from. And phase 2, other foundational documents might imply something like, we realize that we need to find a way to update them or reinforce them or vote on them or whatever it might happen, or have another gathering and conference where everybody comes together and revisits them, etc.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really looking forward to, the ongoing conversations surrounding this. And I wouldn't imagine that this has been discussed at length yet, but having been a part of establishing a code of conduct for several different organizations and consortia and events, because of, bandwidth issues just in conducting this work generally, I'll be really interested in discussions surrounding how the code of conduct is applied or enforced once it is developed, because that's another process that takes people to support and a line of communication and whatnot. So I do think that that's probably a bit premature to have that all sorted out, but that's definitely a big part of that too, is that, what happens if somebody, if there's, an infraction or something like that. So yeah, looking forward to talking about that moving forward.
So if there's no more questions or comments to add, then I think that's done from my side. Thank you.
I might call John. John, at the last council call, which is one of the governance structure or the core decision-making group in the Warsaw governance model, one of the things that was discussed was that these were priority topics and that it would be good for it to be more visible, that they were being worked on. So if I may humbly ask for you to say a couple of words, not necessarily like in the name of the council, but just you being part of the council, what do you think of the process that's been defined so far? Do you have any ideas about how we might share it out more wildly, broadly? Yeah, I'd appreciate if you had a couple of words.
Yeah, I think it seems like it's a really completely open process and completely transparent for anybody that comes to it, which is fantastic, right? I mean, I think it's being designed that way from the very beginning. So it would be tough for anybody to say like, oh, I felt like that. And like people can always feel excluded. Like, you can't tell people how to feel, but like there are no barriers being created. I think the only barrier is what you mentioned, Barbara, which is like, how do we share it out? I am one who thinks right now that it just seems like we are spread over like 6 different communication platforms all at the same time. Most of them are not native to any work that I do whatsoever. So checking on these is like, basically Barbara sends me an email and says, hey, John, people are trying to talk to you. And then I go and check it. Because it's, so I think the key is going to be, how do we let the wider community know that this stuff is going on? This is the time to comment. That, I think for me, that's the big hurdle in all of this. If even I'm one of the people involved and I'm having trouble with that, I can't imagine what people who are a little bit less involved are gonna have.
Do you feel overloaded with like newsletters and mails from the IoPA Alliance, or do you feel this would deserve its own mail? Because it's been put in the newsletter, but I'm very aware that since we send one a month, there's always a lot in it. And only in August did we test putting only one thing in it, which was like join the DAPC review. So would that be something that you think would be welcome in your inbox? Like, this process is starting, these are the key dates.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I don't know who gets the newsletter, assuming that like does get read widely. That would be great. I think it's better than putting it through some other platforms. I think email is the current, like, you know, certified. It's the certified letter of a couple of decades ago, right? It's you can't really say like if you didn't look at your email, it's on you. It's not on anyone else at this point.
Yeah, unlike Slack or a brand new forum or things like that. We have hundreds of people of that newsletter, so we're very wary, like very careful about not overloading people, because there's so many events that people ended up joining this newsletter on. We want to be respectful of their inbox, but maybe this is so cross-cutting that it would be relevant. Any other thoughts?
Just in deference to Sarah's comment, it also does depend upon the age of the receiver as to what is considered the type of messaging that you must read. Yeah, I
Thank you. Any other thoughts and comment from anyone? Right. Well, then, thank you very much, Anna. And again, join the conversation on the forum, and don't hesitate to reach out to us by email, by Slack, on the forum, in any shape or form if you want to be involved in this. One member of the governance task force had mentioned that they're comfortable joining the working groups, but not able to do work between the working group sessions. Saying this out loud, you can be involved in this in any shape or form, and you're welcome to just give a read through the process, or say be interested in one of the deliverables. Like, we welcome any type of involvement. So thank you very much. Hi.